screen. All right. And the meeting ID appears to be right. Oh, I'm not sure. Last time there was an audio problem. Computer audio connected. Ah, it's good. It's using the USB. Good. Then it should really be picking up sound pretty well. Okay. So hopefully it is working. All right. Let me just lights. Well, I got to wait 10 minutes, so let's look at the news. Here. Get rid of that. Okay. Quite a few good ones just this morning. That one's actually very relevant to this class. Well, here's a few things worth knowing. This guy wanted to make a shellcode encoder and a decoder, and I'm glad to see this because I've heard this for years, and I know it's true from what little attempts I've done to slip things past antivirus. If you scramble stuff even a little bit, antivirus is totally helpless. And so what he did was he made, instead of just encrypting it with XOR, he made a running XOR, where you start with a random number, and you encrypt the first byte, and then you take that output to encrypt the next byte and the next byte, like cipher block chaining. So each one is encrypted with a different key. And that's easy enough to do in Python or any language, but he shows you here how to make the assembly language decryptor to put in front. So you can have something that will automatically decrypt and run, which is very nice. Metasploit has half a dozen ways to encrypt payloads, and what happens is the antivirus companies recognize it, and it doesn't defeat them. And I've often had people say there were Russian forums where someone for 30 bucks will write you a custom encryptor, and all you have to do is just do anything that's not one of the standard encryption routines, and this is one of the many things. So I'm thinking I may make that into a project for the encryption class, just practicing slightly unusual encryption schemes. Now, as I remember, there's no way to get this thing off the screen, and I was able to move it last time somehow. There, that's right. Okay. All right. So anyway, so this is Maltego. I've never gotten any good out of Maltego, but this guy found something called, this is an alternative to Maltego. He found something called Spy on Web. This is often the case where you have somebody you think is a crook, like they send you a phishing email, and you want to know who they're related to. And so what this one does, it uses this Spy on Web to find their tracking code, their Google Authenticator tracking code. Everybody uses Google, the Google service, which I forget the name of. There's a thing where you put some HTML code in your page, and Google will automatically put a tracking cookie on the site, and then they will optimize your site, so you make more money. So every commercial business has this on their site, and a lot of people share it on many sites. So it's one of the clues, and this is a Python script that automatically finds all the other sites that are using the same Google identity. And that's a good way to find out what other scams this person is related to. They say that Google has a plan so its new Titan chip will resist hardware hacking. Now, from my understanding of this article, that is not really true. The hardware Trojans that I'm aware of are really scary, and this is what the NSA does. If they want to spy on you, they grab your package from Cisco, where your router is coming, from UPS, they open the box and add more chips inside the router to keep copy of your traffic and then ship it to you. And as far as I know, there is nothing you can do to protect yourself from that unless you're able to open the box and audit the hardware. And the other kind of hardware Trojan that I know the US military is very, very afraid of is hardware Trojan built into the chip at design time. If you have, say, a processor, an i7 processor, it's got 100 billion connections in hardware, microscopically in the silicon, and you could totally embed a secret tracking device inside there, and there's no way you could ever detect it unless you're going to spend $1 million and dissolve it with acid and somehow have access to the schematics and figure it all out. You'd have to put as much work as designing a new one to find it, and they're very concerned that that has happened. But this one detects firmware alterations, which is not what I would exactly call hardware hacking. I think it should be firmware hacking, but what it does is the chip, they have someplace to put something they trust, I think a trusted platform module, and then they require that all the firmware code has to be signed with a public signature that's verified through their certificate authorities and from a trusted company like Google. So it's pretty clever. This way, this is what Microsoft did in the ARM version of the Windows 8 tablet when it came out. It would verify the kernel of the operating system with a public certificate before it booted up. And that meant nobody could alter it. You couldn't get a rootkit. And it looks like they've extended that sort of protection here. So all the firmware is signed and verified before it runs, which is pretty good, but I don't think I would say that protects you from hardware Trojans. Yeah.
On the previous one, the hardware, when the thing gets interdicted, the implants, what does that look like in the physical 3D world? I mean,
there were some blog posts back from Snowden showing them opening it and putting more chips on the board, putting devices in there.
They put more chips in it, but they surface mount multi-layer.
Oh, well, what the NSA does is just add more chips inside the box because nobody opens their routers. Now, what
any carrier or something.
Yeah, they'd put in something that takes an extra copy and sends out traffic, so there might be ways to detect the results. But I mean, for example, a simple low-tech way to do it is a hardware keylogger. You put it in line with the keyboard. It amounts to the same thing, and there's no way you can detect it except by physical audit of the hardware. That's what happened in San Francisco's rogue admin, Terry Childs. He put rogue hardware devices on the network. He bought modems and connected them to phone lines and put them in the network line and then hid them in closets and ceiling and stuff. So he had remote control access to it that nobody knew about.
He was a CCIE that Gavin Newsom went to visit.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about him was he had defeated the chain of command, so nobody else was controlling the network, and he was ignoring what his superiors said and doing whatever he liked. And he did put hardware remote control devices that were unauthorized. And so then it's funny, when they arrested him, they had a computer scientist at UC Berkeley that went on the radio and said, well, all they have to do is change the administrator password and then they know he's gone. And I'm like, dude, you haven't got a clue. You now have to physically audit every foot of wire. I mean, he could have put stuff anywhere. Anyway, that's the problem. Once you have an insider attack, it's very hard to ever be sure they're gone because they can hide all sorts of stuff on your network. This one was amazing. I've never seen this before. The CIA made a bogus, WikiLeaks jumped out more Vault 7. This is more Russians. You know, the Russians we're in the middle of a cyber war, except I don't think you can call it a war when one side just sits there and let the other one shoot them and do nothing about it. But that's what we are. The Russians are attacking us. They're hurting us. They've planned it for years. They announced they're going to do it. They say they're going to split us in half into a right and a left that will war against ourselves and have riots in the streets and hate our president and not trust our democracy. And it's working very well because our president refuses to admit it's happening or do anything to stop it. So one of the many things they're doing is leaking out military secrets to make us upset at our intelligence community. And that's working very well. And so using Julian Assange as an agent, and WikiLeaks is leaking out this stolen CIA stuff, which the Russians stole. And this latest one is pretty gruesome. The CIA wrote fake updates to spy on the FBI and the NSA. So this is, I think, the big message of the Snowden leaks from about 6 years ago when everyone freaked out is that the NSA was treating American companies as the adversary and hacking them, like Yahoo and Google. And people felt like that was pretty rotten. And now they're treating other U.S. intelligence agencies as the adversary and hacking them. They said that because they have an information sharing agreement between the CIA and the NSA, but they don't trust them to really tell you everything. So they also infected them and steal the data electronically to compare it and see if they're really telling us all the stuff they were supposed to be telling us. So I guess I kind of always knew it was this kind of insane, cutthroat, trust nobody world in the world of espionage, but when it leaks out, it makes them look pretty bad. I know in Russia, the same thing happened. The KGB actually one branch of the KGB actually mounted an intelligence operation to sneak into a Washington safe and steal a document. And then they found out that a previous branch of the KGB had already stolen the same document years earlier and not told them. Because this is the way secrecy goes. You trust nobody, so the other part of your own government, you don't trust them either. So you undo each other's works and contradict each other and stuff. And I think it's much worse now. This is what Trump's been complaining about. He says the FBI is largely disloyal to him. There's a huge cadre of people all through the government that do not feel like Trump is a legitimate president and undermine everything he does and undo it and feel like they're saving the country by doing so. And I'm sure that is all true. Inside the government, there's just as much division and chaos as there is out on the street. A bunch of people inside the government are not accepting the current administration and working with it. They're actually trying to undermine it. It is kind of nuts. So AccuWeather got busted. This is actually pretty easy to do, and this applies to, it's very hard to audit anything on an iPhone. But the one thing you can easily do on an iPhone is run the traffic through a proxy and look at the traffic. And so they found that AccuWeather is sending your exact location to advertisers. Now, this is of great value to advertisers. If you remember the movie Minority Report, Tom Cruise will walk past a bulletin board and it will light up like a television and say, "Hi, Tom, you bought a sundae here last week. How about another one? We'll give you 10% off." And so they would like to track everybody, like exactly what room you're in and how close you are to a store. And AccuWeather does that, but they didn't tell the users. And then when they complained, they claimed to have stopped it, but they ran it through Burp again. And they said, nope, it's still sending every location, exact location up to the ad networks. So we'll see what happens. Windows 10 started a lot of this. When Microsoft updated Windows 10, people did the same thing, and they found out that Windows 10 was sending all kinds of information back to Microsoft, and people got upset about the privacy invasion. Yeah.
So even in the settings, the location services, turn them on, you dial up which app you can turn on and off.
Supposedly. That's an interesting question. I wonder if that works. It would be interesting to know. I don't know. I would test it. I certainly wouldn't assume that that works because they might have another way to get it. And, you know, this is why you don't want to collect data you don't need, because you have a responsibility. Because now that we know that AccuWeather collects that data and some advertising agency collects that data, they can now be subpoenaed by law enforcement agencies and defense attorneys saying, we want that data to prove where this guy was because he's accused of a crime. You know, that's why one time I was going to archive the data, the network data from the hacking lab, so we could practice archiving it and analyzing it. And I decided, and I was going to put video surveillance in there so we could do that. And I said, you know, if I do that, I'm now going to have created a problem, because now somebody will say, I want to review those records, and then I'll have to decide whether to hand them over or not. It's a whole lot safer to not collect data if you don't want to face the consequences of people coming to you and demanding to see it. Yeah.
Are the iPhones or iDevices susceptible to, there's some kind of a high frequency thing that gets sent out to phones and they track where you go in the store?
I've heard there are various ways to do it. There are ways to, for example, you can turn on Bluetooth and then they can tell totally where you are because Bluetooth is short range. There are also techniques that use sound waves, like you were saying, where you make the phone emit a sound and you track where it is. You can also do it from Wi-Fi, if the Wi-Fi is turned on. And always, your cell phone provider always knows where you are within about 300 yards because they have to know which cell phone tower to send phone calls through. So there are many ways it's tracking you. The issue here is it's more than just your IP address or the cell phone tower, which give a general location. It's the more precise data that it has from these other signals.
So can iPhones microphone be subject to such an attack?
Yes, absolutely. But of course, now that the NSA does is they insert malware on the iPhone, and then they turn on the microphone and record what you're doing, and they could also probably get your location from it. But here, of course, the issue is it's normal commercial apps doing it without telling you. That's what people are getting mad about. I mean, it's certainly technically possible, but usually you'd have to get physical possession of the iPhone or trick them into installing some kind of software. I was a kid, Captain Kirk wears this thing and they always know right where he is. He's in the brig, he's in there. And I said, that would be pretty cool. And I said, but people would be not willing to sacrifice their privacy, but they totally are. Everybody's wearing a tag like that now, and a bunch of people know exactly where you are, and people don't care most of the time. Yeah.
Windows 10 collect any personal information?
Yes. Every URL you go to is uploaded, every patch you put on. That's why people got upset when Windows 10 came out. They turned on this kind of warning. It's constantly sending data to Microsoft. It was a big scandal, and Microsoft responded. See, this is because of a design decision by Microsoft. Microsoft didn't want to keep burdening your computer with more and more security software, so they put it in the cloud. So every time you go to a website, it sends the URL up to the cloud, so Microsoft's cloud service can decide if that's a malicious website or not. And they put all kinds of filters in the cloud. So their point of view is this is, and by the way, Microsoft has a point. This is how you can extend your operating system to portable devices. You know, if you can't run AI on your little phone, it's not running AI. It's sending the data to a server that's running AI. So this is, with all your portable devices, it has to send everything to the cloud for processing. And that's what Microsoft wants to do. They want to move the processing to the cloud so your device can be portable and have longer battery life and everything. But of course, that means everything has to go up to the cloud. And there is a privacy result. This is like what Microsoft used to have ads. I don't know if they still do, talking about why Bing is better, well, Hotmail is better than Gmail, because Google reads all your mail and targets ads. And Microsoft doesn't, because they're not an advertising company. They don't care. They don't read your mail. It's an issue, you know. That's why when people first started going to the cloud, there was a lot of backlash from the privacy complications, and people just sort of got used to it. And here's another one. So Java security has been appalling. They started getting a little better about 2 years ago. Java used to be a wide open door to take over any computer anytime. And now there apparently is no process for reporting vulnerabilities in OpenJDK or patching them or even talking about them, which is not good. So they're trying to create one. But in order to do that, for some reason, they have decided that the only way to make a vulnerability discussion group is to make everyone sign a non-disclosure agreement, so they can talk about stuff and then control what information comes out. And that violates the open source license. So they're trying to make an exception to the open source license so they can have a secret vulnerability discussion forum. It all sounds pretty poorly thought out to me, but that's where they're going. This is, of course, the huge issue of ethical disclosure. I do this all the time. I find a problem in a commercial product. Now, what the manufacturer always wants is for you to just shut up and poison yourself and never tell anybody, and they'll not fix it, and they would be happy with that. And what the researcher always wants is to go on stage at DEF CON and get famous by showing it to the whole world. And so you try to compromise by telling them in secret and then waiting for some period of time for them to ignore you before you go public. And it's the same thing here. You know, if you're there are legitimate reasons why vulnerability discussions should be secret. There are legitimate reasons why they should be public. And everybody struggles back and forth across that divide. There's a free Palo Alto class. And I think you can get I've got a Palo Alto firewall for you guys to use here, a virtual one. But anyway, that's amazing. This is a free Palo Alto class. You might want to take it for this class. The CCDC uses a Palo Alto firewall and other commercial stuff. It's good to learn how to do it. You'll find in the virtual machines link a Palo Alto image that I got from Palo Alto. We can run to practice on. And you might want to take this free class. It's in my news links from yesterday or so from Udemy. I'm surprised to get that kind of stuff for free. This guy is a researcher, and he's talking about public key pinning. This is a huge issue. If you have, this is because HTTPS turned out to be a whole lot less safe than we thought it was. About 8 years ago at DEF CON, there were 2 big problems with HTTPS, and a bunch more have appeared. The problem with HTTPS is that it's all or nothing. If you go to a site and the certificate is not signed by a trusted authority, your browser will say, don't go here, and make it difficult to go there. If it is signed by any trusted authority, your browser completely trusts it. But those trusted authorities are not all that trustworthy. Some of them are like the government of China and stuff, so certainly they can be doing bad things to you. And it's now an open secret that virtually all the American certificate authorities just sell root certificates to let anybody rich impersonate them. And corporations do this to man-in-the-middle HTTPS to monitor traffic in and out of their network. There are law enforcement and spy agencies that have man-in-the-middle devices for HTTPS that use these root certificates. So the defense against it is public key pinning. You write your app, so not only does it go through the operating system and verify that the certificate authority is trusted, it has a second bit of information. It knows which certificate should be used, perhaps by the key or the serial number, and it will not accept any other certificate. So you add in your software a second layer of verification. And this guy's talking about how this leads to enormous trouble. It was an idea that would make you more secure, but in practice, everything gets out of control really fast. For example, if you update your certificate, then your old app's going to quit working unless you have a way to update the app. And if you have a way to update the app, the bad guy has a way to change the number and get in. And what he says here is what happens when your server gets compromised and you lose the private key. Now, you can't sign an update. You can't prove who you are anymore. And the apps are trying to get the old one you can't use anymore. So the problem has always been key distribution. The same thing is wrong with PGP. PGP is an essentially perfect encryption scheme, but you have to somehow have this private key that you hold and have available when you need it and don't lose. And you have to have some way to put this public key up on a server where the other person can find it, and don't confuse it with fake public keys. And both of those are huge holes you can drive a truck through. So it's interesting. The math is very good, but no matter how you do cryptography, there's an issue of handling the key that is just really, really difficult. And nobody's found any good solutions. And it leads to just an endless series of problems. Anyway, so I hope you guys have made some progress in your projects. Several people wanted to do the code path project. I've got, now the code path person in charge, let me show you the code path stuff, because that's one I'd like to see some people working on. And I've got it somewhere here. There we go. I think it's here. I might have to go to my email to get a link that works. Oh, good. Okay, this is it. I just wanted to show you. Now, you have to get in with a GitHub account, and about 7 or 8 students sent me their GitHub account, and I sent them to the owner of this, and he did not add you yet. But what I'm planning to do is get some responsible students in the group and just give them my GitHub login so you can get started. Unfortunately, this thing is not on GitHub. I thought it was, and then I could just fork it and have a copy of it we could work from, but it's not on GitHub. It's on some kind of content server. This looks like WordPress to me, but they authenticate through GitHub. It's your GitHub account you use to log in. But here's how it looks. This is the cybersecurity course, and I would make this thing go away if there was any way to do it. There seems not to be. Oh, there we go. Anyway, let's try putting it up top again. It won't move. Okay, all right. And now, anyway, so here's a summary of the course. And so first you have data exposures, and the trick here is it has the usual kind of description of security issues and how to fix them, like you'd find in CNIT 123. And then it has some labs, and then it has a programming assignment. And what they did originally, this was the heart of the course, all these programming assignments where you write code with these problems, and then you write code that fixes these problems. And that's the part that was too difficult for CodePath to support. Everybody wanted help on their programs, and it didn't have enough staff to do it. So that's the part that I think we should focus on. That's the most interesting new part. And that's why you have to be able to do a little bit of programming. So you write PHP to process form data. Now you put input sanitization to detect malicious characters in the form data. Then you sanitize the output, so your form passing data onto later code is not used for attacks. Then you write things that handle cookies correctly and put in things like anti-CFRS tokens to prevent people from stealing cookies and replaying them on other machines, and so on. And every bit of it is here. Week 1 has modules here and these links that go to these things, and here's these in-class lab, and here's the optional thing. Like I say, these optional extension projects are the real meat for us. Those are the ones that were originally required that were too difficult, and if we could help them write documentation and help for those or something, or just comment how to make them better, this is probably where we'll learn the most. So the people who are interested in this one, I'll just let you use my GitHub login and you can get started. I think we should do some of this and report on how, first just decide how good it is, and then have ideas how to improve it. And you don't have to get through the whole thing. If it's too much, get some good out of it. It's not in a finished form yet. All right, and I know there are a lot of other projects. There's a CTF going on right now. I sent an email to CCSF hackers. It's in a Russian CTF, and I didn't get very far, and I've been too busy doing other things, and I think everyone else is too at the start of the semester. Only a couple people were interested. But anyway, there's CTFs every week or two, so if you missed this one, there'll be plenty more coming after it. I know there's a team of people that were working on Pico CTF. And is there anybody who didn't come to the last class? Okay, then you guys should know the class structure. There's no lectures really. There's no textbook. You have to form a group and do some kind of project. And there are about 4 projects I know of going. And if anybody's represented, there's a CodePath project I just showed you. There's a bunch of people just doing Pico CTF, which is an archived practice CTF from Carnegie Mellon, which if you've never done a capture the flag competition, that's the one to start from. And I think there's people forming to practice for OSCP certification, which is very valuable and very advanced beyond all my classes. And I think there's a group forming to plan to do Western Regional CCDC, where you form a group of network people and protect a network. And there's eventually going to be a group for CPTC. It may be the same people, which is the offensive side, the pen testing club. That'll probably come from the OSCP candidates, because the OSCP certification is very much the right kind of knowledge to do the pen testing competition. And any kind of project will do, but I highly recommend working in groups. That's why a lot of people don't show up for the lecture, and it doesn't really matter. As long as you're participating in a group project, you're fine. As far as your grade, that comes from progress reports. You have to make 3 in-class presentations about the progress of your project, and that determines your grade. Does anybody have any questions about anything? All right, well, I think I'm going to stop the stream and the recording. That's as much as you get in the way of a lecture here. And I'm just inclined to go to the lab and help anybody who wants to work today. Let me try and figure out how to stop this. I'm not very good at that yet. Stop. Stop share. Good. Close this.